Okay, so let's look at complex sentences. So a sentence with a clause, at least one subordinate clause, introduced by a subordinate conjunction. So there are three things here. Subordinate clauses. A clause that relies on the main clause to make sense, along with subordinate conjunction. So a conjunction, like a connecting word, and they, then, that relies on something else, quite possibly other conjunction or a clause to make sense. Anything subordinate does not make sense unless it's with the main, attached to the main version, the subordinate clause, subordinate conjunction, the main one. So, main clause, she told them. Subject, she, told, spoke, tell, them, object. Subject, verb, object. Nice. Subordinate conjunction, that. She told them that. Subordinate clause, they had left. Again, subject, they had left. Well, they had left. Verb, left, gone, departed. So, this conjunction, this subordinate conjunction, doesn't make sense unless it's attached to the main clause. She told them that something, and as a conjunction, it introduces, it connects another clause to it. She told them that what? That subordinate clause, they had left. She told them that they had left. Makes sense. Subordinate clause, and this clause only makes sense when attached to the clause in the same sentence, or at the very least in the same paragraph. Otherwise it makes little sense. They had left. Well, who had left? Well, what do you mean? Well, what do you mean? It leaves a few more questions unanswered. But she told them that they had left. Makes sense. And then we have subordinate conjunction, subordinate clause, and main clause. So subordinate conjunction, if it rains, subordinate clause, it rains, yeah, okay. If it rains, what about it? If it rains, what? What? If it rains, what? Main clause, we will get wet. Ah. Subject, we will, verb, object, wet. We will get wet. We will be damp. We will be soaked. We will be dirty. We will be wet. So you could even flip it around. We will get wet if it rains. If it rains, we will get wet. Makes sense. This subordinate conjunction is dependent on the main clause. And along with the subordinate clause, we will get wet if it rains. Ah. We will, or if it rains, we will get wet. Ah. Makes sense. These two sentences are dependent on the main clause, and then these two alone don't make much sense. If it rains. If it rains what? What about it? And if it rains, okay. Then we have subordinate clause, subordinate, or conjunction, subordinate clause, main clause, subordinate conjunction, subordinate clause. Okay. Subordinate conjunction, when. Introduce the sentence. When, if, they, then. When, subordinate clause, they go back. When they go back. When they go back what? When they go back, main clause, they found, subject, verb. They found. When they go back what? What do they find? What do you mean? they found that subordinate conjunction connecting another clause, another subordinate conjunction to the main clause. They found that subordinate conjunction, nothing had changed. Subject, verb, nothing changed. All the same. Makes sense. When they got back home, for example, object home. Example, home. When they got back home, they found, verb, that nothing had changed. Makes sense. See, each of these are dependent on the main clause. What if we say nothing had changed when nothing had changed when they went back home? Not quite the same. Nothing had changed when they found that they got back. Kinda works. Nothing had changed when they found that they got back. Not really. Still gets the message across, but not as smooth as when they go back, they found that nothing had changed, or even when they got back. When they got back, they found that nothing had changed. Makes sense. You could even say, when they got back, they found nothing had changed, and completely remove the subordinate conjunction. That still makes sense. If you can use fewer words to get the same message across when talking, communicating, all the better. How cool is that? So, main clause, subject, verb, object, subordinate conjunction, connecting words that depend on the main clause, subordinate clause, other objects, verbs or subjects that depend on the main clause. She told them that they had left. If it rains, we will get wet. When they got back, they found that nothing had changed. How cool is that, language explorers? Let's keep learning and exploring. Let's keep exploring.